Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Max on Color. Sorry for the double intro. Lol, total failed. I hope you're all guys are doing well. How are you guys? Let me share my screen. Hang on. If I still know how to do that. Alrighty. So you probably can see my screen now. Okay. Welcome to Max on Color. And today we will pick up exactly where we left last 2 weeks ago. I think last 2 weeks ago we talked about the getting started into Magic Bullet looks. I think all of us probably already like very familiar with Magic Bullet looks. You probably use it. I don't know, in any like host applications, like in any software. You probably use it in After Effects. You probably use it in Cinema 4D or in Final Cut Pro or in Media Composer or even DaVinci Resolve. Sometimes depends on how you use it. It can be like really tricky. And this series, the idea of this series is to like introducing to you every single tools inside Magic Bullet, and probably introducing you some workflow that you can use for grading. Because I think that's like the main concern in the chat last 2 weeks. Everybody was asking, can you show more into the workflow of grading? So I think that's what we are going to do today. And if you missed the last episode, because the last episode we talk about every single tools that is available inside Magic Bullet looks, what every tools does, and the basic interface, how you navigate and how you use scopes inside Magic Bullet looks, how you save presets and export or something like that. That is available in the last episode. So make sure you check that. It's available in YouTube. So if you go to Max on Training Team, you'll be able to see that. Hello, Greg. Thank you for joining. And Haxer, thank you so much for joining as well. Let me share my screen. Where is it? Perhaps something like this. Yeah. So if you want to check out the event that is hosted by Maxon Training Team, you can go to maxon.net/events, and you'll be able to see that we have plenty of webinars coming. And tomorrow, if you are really into VFX, you can learn a lot of tips and tricks in VFX with Hashi and Seth, and they will be having a special guest from Territory Studio. So make sure you check the episode out. And next Monday, there are also some episodes in Demystifying Post-Productions about ZBrush and Substance workflow. So if you really like to work across this different tools and, to create great piece of art, make sure you're checking that out. And Mark Potocznik, the render baron, the person that really the source that can give you like really nice source for photorealistic rendering, will be in Ask the Trainer next week. So make sure you check that out in Ask the Trainer next Thursday. And like usual, if you are new to the show and you want to get some goodies, merchandise, you can do that. So if you never ever have order any this t-shirt from Maxon, you can get one. So they are for free. You can follow the link that Kyle will be providing in the chat. By the way, thank you so much, Kyle. I'm accompanied by Kyle today. He's in the back and producing the show. You can follow the link, and the passcode for today, the password is Spooky Renders. Everything is in capital, like you see in the chat. And you can order one of this t-shirt free of charge. And you just need to pay for a shipping cost. Very small shipping cost. And I was talking about the YouTube page before. So if you want to check the last episode where we talk about every single tools inside Magic Bullet looks and how to use the scopes and so on and so forth, you can go to YouTube, type in Maxon Training Team. And if you go to playlist and search for Maxon Color, view full playlist, you'll be able to see that the part 1 is already there. And what's nice with this recording is that they are also time-stamped, and you can just go exactly to the to the topic that you really want to learn and that is really nice. So that was it. I think that's the housekeeping for today. And let me continue the guide on Magic Bullet looks, right? So last episode, we talked about every single tool of Magic Bullet looks. And today, let's see a little bit of the workflow of how you can use Magic Bullet looks in when you want to, grade your footage, right? Um, by the way, before we move on, if there is a questions about any specific tools in the Magic Bullet looks or anything about Magic Bullet looks, feel free to just drop it in the chat, and I'll check that out, and I'll answer anytime I have a time to answer any questions. Make sure you just write it in the chat, and I'll take care of that. Okay. So let me share my screen again. Okay. So, like what we know, Magic Bullet looks is available in multiple different hosts. You can use it in Cinema 4D, you can use it in After Effects. But whenever you are using this Magic Bullet looks inside like Cinema 4D or After Effects, you're probably using it to like a creating a special effects. But whenever you want to use it for like color grading, normally there's slight how do you call it, slight change in your approach that you want to use, right? So for instance, in this case, I have like a multiple different clips, right? And all of them, like some of them are in Rec 709, and one of the clips is in the camera space, in the logarithmic how do you call it, in camera color space, and it's a log clip. And the other one, all three of them are in the display space already, or in Rec 709, or in sRGB. So when you have a timeline consist of like a different how do you call it, type of clips, you can absolutely use Magic Bullet like per clips basis, right? Or you can also use Magic Bullet in a adjustment layer. But as I told you, whenever we want to color grade our footage, probably there's like a shift of thinking that we need to do first, right? Um, the first thing is that what I want to talk about Magic Bullet looks when we are using it for color grading is that whenever we are color grading, it is like when we are sculpting within ZBrush or modeling within Cinema 4D, right? Normally when we want to model or when we want to sculpt, we don't start with the object and try to nail the detail from the beginning, right? You don't like build a statue and then after that tweak the nose until it's detailed, and then you move on to the eyes, you move on to the arm, and so on and so forth. But normally what you want to do is like you create an outline, like a general picture, big picture of it, and then after that you focus on the detail, and then it's always like a back and forth checking back if your looks and your grade is actually match to each other, like complementing the overall project. So I'll show you that in a short period of time right after this. Before I was talking about using Magic Bullet looks per clip basis. If you have like a very short clip, like I don't know, maybe like 5 seconds video or something like that, and there's not so many cuts, absolutely, you can use Magic Bullet looks and clip per clip basis. Go to one clip, drop Magic Bullets, create a really nice look, move to another clip, and then repeat or copy and paste and then tweak that. I mean, that's fine. That's a really nice approach. But just bear in mind, think of this. Like if you have at least like, I don't know, 5 minutes video or something like that, or 3 minutes video, you probably have like more cuts, right? And if you're doing this, like clip per clip basis grading, I don't think you will have like a like much time to do this, because you'll spend the whole time, like big chunk of your time, just to like tweak clip per clip basis. I mean, if you have like a infinite time, that's probably fine. But normally when you're working for a project, uh deadline, right? Deadline is like the enemy of all of us, or I don't know, the goal that you want to keep it as close as possible. So One way that I would like to show you today is to work with Magic Bullet looks in the adjustment layer. So I already have some like a clips, like a sequence that already prepared. But instead of showing you the final result, let us just like start from the beginning, and let me show you the approach to grade our project. Sorry, my chair is wobbly. Okay, the first thing that I want to how do you call it show you is like the idea of like, first, if you have like a nice photography like what I have at the moment, instead of like go to each clip and then like tweak them, normalize them individually, why don't we just like create a general look, and then after that we grade under it to save times. So what I mean is that you can use Magic Bullet looks to also like some sort of like faking or like tweaking your color management as well. So for example, what I want to show you, oh, here's nice tips, by the way. If you are in the effects panel, if you're tapping in Bullet in Premiere Pro, you'll be able to see all the Magic Bullet tools, Magic Bullet Suite tools. And the flagship tools, like what we are going to talk today, is Magic Bullet looks. So if I am drag and drop it, I can use Magic Bullet looks by drag and drop it into adjustment layer. And the adjustment layer is covering the whole clips in this sequence. So what we can do is that first, we can launch Magic Bullet looks. And what we want to do is that, because these are lock clip, and what we want to do when we have lock clip is that we want to bring these clips into the how do you call it, into the display space, right? You can tweak it by hands. You can play around with the contrast, lift gamma gain, and make it looks beautiful. Or I can just like simply use color management framework to do all those for you. And what I mean is that if you're going to Magic Bullet looks and you select input and output, here in the mode, you can change the mode to from 1D color handling into open color IO / ACES. And from here, what you need to do is that you just need to understand which camera this how do you call it, this clips were shot with. And in this case, I have that informations, and this is a clip that coming from Arri Alexa camera. And Arri Alexa camera has a tone curve that is called the Arri Lock C, and normally the color space is Arri Alexa White Gamut RGB. And in this case, that is the input that I want to select, right? And what I want to do is that I go to input, click the input and select input. And there you go. You have Arri. So if you're using Canon camera, you can select the Canon camera and search which camera that you are using there. And in this case, it's Arri. And I can just select the Arri Alexa with exposure index of 800. And now the next thing that we need to do is to define our output. What type of screen that we want to output our project. And in this case, I want to output it into Rec 709, which is the default output. And I can preview it in sRGB if I want to, or I can also change my preview in Rec 709, just like that. So once we select confirm, because all the adjustment layer is like, this adjustment layer is covering all the clips, which is coming from Arri Alexa. That's nice. So we can like normalize our image for within one go. Happy whale VFX saying that I'm proud to say that the burnout video is one of my works that I rendered with Redshift. Oh man, look at you. Awesome. Yeah, man. This one, right? Cool. This is such a nice clip. Hey, man. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I got it from ArtGrid. That is really cool. Right. Let's go back to our project. So in this case, we already create we already normalize all of our clip using Magic Bullet looks within Premiere Pro using the adjustment layer. So what I want to do next is that I want to create looks. But before we move on, is that when you are working with a certain type of camera, like you find yourself like, oh, I work with this camera very often, and you just don't want to go through all those process again. You can save this as a preset. So if you open your color management by clicking either input or output, you can select the presets, drop down, and you can save as. And in this case, you can give a name and then press save. It will be available in one of this drop down. Okay, so what I want to do now is that let us just build a simple looks to create to color grade under, right? So we can do that manually by selecting any of these tools, or if you just recently update your Magic Bullet looks, there are 38 new presets, and those 38 new presets are really cool. There, some of them are like a, how do you call it, a basic film emulations. So if you like to do like film emulations, you can select those presets, and some of them are based on some popular music video. So in this case, I'll just select this one. I know it's a little bit too dark, but we will grade our how do you call it, our project under it. So what I want to change here is that I noticed that the grain is a little bit too how do you call it, a little bit too strong, and I can just reduce it a little bit. But instead of reducing the strength, I can just select another presets, or I can change the grain amount or the size or the texture. And in this case, I just select the classic 35. Where is it? There you go, somewhere like this, and without the grain and with the grain. So now let's just confirm it. So now we have our looks embedded into all of our clips, right? So of course, these are not balanced yet. So you can see that some of them are really dark and some of them are really like blue or red. And, we just need to grade under it. And we can do that by using Colorista, for example. Who is familiar with Colorista, by the way, guys? Here, now that we have Magic Bullet looks in our adjustment layer, what we can do is that perhaps we can use Colorista, but instead of doing Colorista in the adjustment layer, we can just go to the clip and apply Colorista in the clip. So by doing that, we will have like one general look that will make our project looks like cohesive. And that is like really important, because whenever you are building a look, I think this is really nice if you can aim for a unity, for a cohesive look, because you don't want to throw people like in and out to whenever you are creating a looks, right? And this is like a really like common pitfall whenever you are grading per clip basis, because you'll spend a lot of time is just to balance clip per clip. And why don't we just like create one look that serve every single clips in our timeline, and after that we can just balance and match under it. And that's what we are going to do today, right? So I have Colorista drag and dropped into my clip. So the important thing about Colorista is that, the control response. The Colorista has two different control response: the video control response and log control response. I mean, personally, whenever I'm working with a log clip, I normally set the control response to log, and that's the response that I like the most whenever I'm working with the log clip. By the way, there's a one hot tip that I want to show you later on with Colorista, is that, in Colorista, there's like this tool called guided color corrections. But instead of us doing that now, let's do that after we balance our clip. later on. And please remind me if I forgot to do that. Okay. So after changing my control response, what I want to do is that I want to analyze my image. At the moment, it seems that, okay, my image looks like very contrasty, and the how do you call it, the exposure is like really dark. Perhaps I want to reduce my contrast slightly, and I can do that by using the contrast tool and just reduce the contrast slightly, something like that. And then perhaps I can bring my shadow up a little bit. And instead of using my lift gamma gain wheel or shadow midtone and highlight wheel, I will go straight into this shadow regions under structure and lighting. The difference is that it has like different targets. So if you have like a grayscale ramp, like grayscale image on your timeline, and you are like using like the shadow regions or the shadow tools here, you'll see that they have a different target. And for what I want to do, I just want to use the shadow regions instead of the let me just show you. Like if I lift up my shadow regions, this is the effect that I have. And if I'm using my shadow wheel, that's the effect that I have. So it's much more aggressive than the shadow regions, right? So I don't want that. By the way, double clicking the middle point, you'll be able to reset your tools, right? So I'll just want to bring my shadow regions up a little bit. Perhaps something like that. Right. And now what I want to do is that I'll open up my gamma a little bit. I can also do that. Something like this. Or instead of like going straight into gamma, perhaps what I want to do first is to just tweak my exposure slightly, bring it up to the desired level. And in this case, it's just 0.3. And from there, we can analyze our saturations level. And in this case, I feel like the image, overall image is a little bit too bright. And I can bring my, instead of bringing my highlight and or shadow up or highlight down, I want to tackle my gamma. It's like the middle part of our image, and bring just that middle part slightly down, right? So something like this. And what I can do is also I can try to like warm up the temperature a little bit using the temperature control, and just slide it to the right, and perhaps add like 10 points, 15 points of warmth in the temperature control. And the next thing that I want to do is that after focusing on this like primary corrections, by the way, if you are following all the, how do you call it, adjustment that we've done so far is like mostly just a primary corrections. And what I meant by primary corrections is that all those corrections is not targeting like specific part of the image and changing it. So we're just like playing with a big brush and how do you call it, try to affect the whole image as a unit. So we're not like how do you call it, using like a small brush and focusing on a specific area of small specific area on the image, and then just focusing and changing that. We're not there yet. So what I want to do is like first I want to handle it in, how do you call it, in iterations, so to say. Like the first iterations of the grade is just like using all the primary tools without like changing anything in particular, like very detailed. So, and also last but not least, what we can do is that we can also play around with the curve and just like bring the midtone slightly down, and perhaps add slightly like a slight saturation, perhaps just 15 points, something like that. So if I disable my Colorista before and after, you can see that, we somehow manage to, how do you call it, to balance our image under the look that we already created before, right? So next, we can move to the next clip, and then we can see that, okay, we will do exactly the same thing again. But what you can also do is that here I already have a Colorista instance. Perhaps I can just like delete everything. So something like that. Let me just delete all this Colorista instance. So what I can do is that I can also just copy and paste the Colorista, Command C, go to the next clip and Command V, and to match our clip, to just like check our clip with the previous clip, what we can do is that in Premiere Pro, you can open your comparison view and you can select side by side or vertical split or horizontal split. In this case, we'll just use the side by side, and we can bring the sample before somewhere like here. And from what I see is that it's pretty good match. And we can move forward to the next clip. And here, can just copy and paste the same Colorista instance. That's because like this is like very easy to do because we are just using like primary tools and nothing is like very like how do you call it, targeted adjustment. Because targeted adjustment, whenever you are doing any targeted adjustment and when you're trying to copy and paste that to another clips, normally they tend to breaks. And that's why focusing with the primary tools first, and then after that get into like the secondary like later on when you already like finish your first pass of your grade. That would be a better idea. So in this case we have like another clips and we can just copy and paste the adjustment here. But here is the thing, since we have like a different angle from our camera, it's a same room but we have a different angle, exposure level looks fine, but then you have like this perceptual difference, right? There's like this how do you call it, I forgot the source, but there's like this experiment. I'll come up with the image if I found it. At the moment I cannot find it. But I stumbled upon it long time ago. There's like this experiment where the author has like a gray scale, like a middle gray dot, and it was surrounded by magenta and magenta circle, and it tends to be appear like greenish. And meanwhile, the same gray patch surrounded by green circles, it tend to look a little bit more magenta. But that's just our perceptions to like how do you call it, playing with us. So what we want to do is like maybe we can just tackle that a little bit. In this case, we can just change the balance of our image, and we can use our highlight wheel, and we can just like drag the red color into the clips slightly. So at the moment it feels like it's very green, and we can just like introduce some red color, something like that, and perhaps reduce the temperature slightly, not too much, something like this. And it's still very green in my eyes. All right, and we can also try to play with the tint control. Oh, there you go. It takes some time. So something like this, and then we can also move forward to this clip and copy and paste the same adjustment as before, good match, and we can move on, right? So if we move to this clip, we have like the same angle from that same camera. So what we can do is like we can just copy this one, copy the Colorista from this one, and paste into this one, something like this. So if I move this into this one, yeah, perhaps it's a little bit hot. We can just reduce the exposure slightly, right? So let me just disable my comparison view and then go to exposure and 0.15 instead of 0.3. Oof. No. Something like this. And here also perhaps reduce the exposure slightly. So something like this. So now if we are moving from one clip to the other, we feel that, okay, we're in the same room. So that's okay. That's good. I mean, there's also like a different school of thought. Some people love to like a match image, like using like the, how do you call it, like the comparison view, and then have it like super match. Like for example, having it like super match. Oh, the blue has to be the same, and the shirt has to be the same. In this case, it has like green tinge in it, and it has to be the same with this one. That's fine. That's perfect. And some other school of thought probably is like the one that I like is that, just move between clips. If you just change between clips and see if there's any like a noticeable difference, that would be like your how do you call it, your point where you want to tackle the image. But if you don't feel like that they looks the same, that looks fine. And you can just get away with that. And if you think carefully, and that's how we actually consume the final product, right? That's how we watch video. We're not like splitting the image and see how do you call it, see the difference or something like that. The image is always like, from one frame to the other frame, it just like jumped from one frame to the other. So I think mimicking that idea when balancing your clips will be nice. Okay, now it feels like this one is a little bit too hot. We can just bring the temperature slightly down. Something like that. And in the end, we still have like this one clips. And we can sample this Colorista here. And we can Command C and use this one here, Command V. And perhaps what we can do is that we want to open the shadow area a little bit more. Something like this. And reduce the contrast slightly more. Okay. Something like that. And we can also roll off the highlight a little bit. Something like this. And we can open the gamma, of course. There you go. And as we open the gamma, we can reduce the highlight slightly. And we can play around with the color temperature as well, because this is outside. It doesn't have to be the same like this clip over here. So it can be a little bit cool. Depends on how you like it. And I just want to change the tint slightly towards magenta. This is like making it all the way to the green and maybe just tweaking it slightly. Something like that. And with a very minimum amount of time spent on this clip, we can get like the first pass of our image like very quick and easy, right? And now if you want to, you can still tweak your looks, going back to your adjustment layer and see if you want to add something. And for my liking is that you can experiment with the tools that you have inside Maxon One. So for example, if you want to, you can combine everything with Universe. And that's the beauty, because anytime you have like Giant Complete or Maxon One, you have all these tools available and you can play around with them. So for example, if I just want to add some frames onto my project, I can use Universe Carousel, if I'm not mistaken. Carousel. There you go. And I can just apply it into my adjustment layer. Boom. And at the moment, you can really see that it is like very, how do you call it? Very harsh and very like a, how do you call it? Very strong, the adjustment that we're making. Umesh just joining in the chat. Hello. And now what we can do is that we can play around with the type of the frame that we want to use, right? Here we have square, or you can use square soft if you like it. Since we have a 16:9 image, we can select 16:9, or we can make it 16:9 soft. But as you see, whenever we are using this, it's like we are defeating our purpose, creating look in the beginning, because it's just like implying its own look on top of it. I don't want that, right? So what you can do is that you can go to the color control, and here in the color process, you can just like dial it down to 0. So it's not taking any of this color process that is done. But you also see that it is bringing the contrast way down. Depends on how you like it. You can just leave it like that, or you can just like tweak it further. And what we can do is that that is because we have a light leaks in this tool. And what we can do is that we can reduce the light leaks. So for example, here the opacity is set to 42, and if we want to, we can just like set it to 0, and you see that there's no light leaks. It's just your looks with a frame. So you can get a frame just like that by using Universe Carousel. Or if you want to, you can just get a slight light leaks and set it probably to around 25, something like that, and you kind of have like this very faded type of look into your project. And as you can see, there's also flickering happening, and you can set the flicker if you want it or not. I don't like flickering, so set it to 0, right? And what you can also do is that you can try to combine with other tools. And for what I like is that you can play around with the black and white tools, and then after that playing around with the blend mode, and probably you can come up with a very nice looking final result. And to do that, let us just create one more adjustment layer. In this case, let's search for another black and white tools inside Universe. And I know for sure that there's one tool that is called Noir inside Universe. There you go, uni.Noir. And we can just drag and drop Noir into our like topmost adjustment layer. And at the moment, it feels like, okay, it's very strong. And you can, if you use Noir, if you want to simulate the feel of film, you can activate this 18 frame per second playback. But I don't want that. Just leave it like this. And I don't want to have like a very strong vignette as well, probably just reduce to half. And now what we can do is that we can go to the opacity, to the blend mode, and we start to play around with it. I mean, soft light is always good, something like that. So it's like kind of like emulating like this look of like bleach bypass look, except that it is very saturated. So that's another unique look. And if you feel like, oh, it is a little bit too much, maybe you can just play around with the amount of the opacity of that layer. So by doing that, you can kind of like getting like this effect like really quick. So another thing is like if that how do you call it? That's not the end of the story, right? So if you want to keep adding something, the world is your oyster with Universe. So what you can do is that perhaps we can just add another Universe tool for just this particular clips. So probably here, what we can do, we can make it a little bit interesting by adding like a texture on top of it. And we can do that by using one tool in the Universe called Texturize Motions. So we can just drag and drop Texturize Motions into this particular tool, particular, how do you call it, clip. Or if you want to, we can just like select everything. Okay. And what you can do is that you can disable the mask, of course, because I want it to be like for all of the area of the image. Now, if we want to, we can create some type of like a dot shading, like half-tone looking texture to our clip. So we can also reduce the size, making it look like that. I don't want to posterize the source time, and we can reduce the jitter or just disable it. So something like that you can create just for one particular, how do you call it, clip if you want to. But I don't want to. But just like disable it. And there you go. Now, if you want to, you can start to focus on the secondary corrections. Like, for example, if you feel that you need to change something, like maybe making her jacket a little bit more magenta, you can do that, right? But first, you need to like finish everything, like the first pass, and then after that, review your image back. And I think by approaching your project like that, you'll be able to save time. Okay, so good. There's no questions. Now the question is that, oh, sorry, I promised you before that there's like hot tip for Colorista, right? This is, by the way, a nice, very nice, cool clips. So with Colorista, you can also normalize your clip, right? You can normalize your clip using Colorista, using the guided color corrections. Like here, you can just like launch guided color corrections, and then after that, you can like tweak the sliders. Like, let me just process this one, and then you can just tweak the black level, and then you can tweak the white level, and so on and so forth. But doing that, it's more like a working in the display refer kind of like situations. But what's nice with the guided color corrections is that what I found out is that you can pair it with the LUT of your preferred, how do you call it, the LUT that is provided by the camera manufacturer. And in this case, it is a image coming from Loxi. So what you can do is that instead of like applying Colorista and launching guided color corrections, what you can do is that first you can choose a LUT, right, and search for the LUT that is how do you call it, proper for that clip. And in this case, I have Loxi LUT, which is you can download it from the RE website. And after you launch after you apply the LUT from RE, you can still tweak this. But if you need guide, you can use guided color corrections. Now your image is like already normalized. It is looking correct according to RE color science. But if you want to tweak it a little bit, you can do so using guided color corrections. So now if I am launching guided color corrections and I press continue, you see that before it is saying that like I don't know what clip it is, but now it's for sure detecting the LUT that you're using. So what we can do is that we can select this particular LUT and we can move forward, and then we can adjust the black level. At the moment, it looks like, oh, my saturation is all gone. But that's just temporary because, whenever you are adjusting contrast, it is nice if you disable the color informations. So you have like a black and white image to work to establish the correct amount of contrast that you like. And what's nice is that there's a recommendation level here, right? So you can just follow that, perhaps here a little bit more, and shifting the midpoints a little bit and reduce the contrast. And finally, we can saturate our image back. And then, last but not least, we can balance our image. So do we like our image to be a little bit more warmer, on the warmer side, slightly towards the green tint, or towards the magenta tint? And what's nice is that you can just grab the informations in the vector scope, and you can just do this, right? Okay, I like it something like this, and boom, finished, right? So you can have like this basic adjustment done within the LUT. So all those adjustments will not exceed the amount that is like how do you call it, that is set by the lookup table. So by applying that, it means like you are balancing your image under the LUT that you're using. So that's one workflow that you can do inside Premiere Pro whenever you want to color grade using Magic Bullet looks. But now the question is like, how can I integrate Magic Bullet looks when I'm using a specific color framework, color management framework? And how do I do that when I am using like a color grading specific app like DaVinci Resolve? So let's do that. Let's go to DaVinci Resolve and see how we can integrate Magic Bullet looks in a color managed framework. So I have exactly the same timeline here. Let me just close Premiere Pro, save it. Yes, I want to save it. Cool, right? So we have exactly the same. At the moment, I have my color management framework turned on. So we have exactly the same clips that we are using before, exactly the same project, but now we want to work within a color management framework. So like before, what we can do is that we can set the color management framework either in project settings or in nodes. So that's like the very nice, how do you call it, advantage using a color grading specific app like Resolve, is that all the color management is like very sophisticated. So for example, you can set the color management in the project settings, right? So you go to the project settings, that's like the menu inside. Like to do that, you can click this gear icon right at the bottom, or you can go to File and Project Settings, or the shortcut is Shift 9, right? And you can go to the color management. Under color science, there are two flavor of color management that you can use within Resolve. The first one is DaVinci Color Manage or Resolve Color Management, and the second one is ACES. So let's use ACES in this case. We can use ACEScct and input transform, because all of our clips are coming from Arri Alexa. We can select the input transform from Arri Loxi, and the output transform, I want to output it to my display, Rec 709, and use color space grading tools, right? Color space aware grading tools. So now if I press save, why it's not updating? This is crazy. Hang on, Max. Oh, that's something that I have to check, because normally when you're doing that, your image will be normalized. Oh, hang on. I have ACES. Does it makes the difference? Because I have like ACES transform in the node as well. But that shouldn't be the case. I don't know what's happening here. Well, that's a total fail for my side at the moment. Okay. Well, that's supposed to be the case, but apparently it's not working today. I don't know what's happening with me. All right, let me show you the second way to color manage your project inside Resolve, right? The second way to do that, instead of doing that in project settings, which is now I totally apparently failed to do that. I don't know why. You can select the DaVinci YRGB normal, like DaVinci YRGB, just the standard default Resolve. And you can use the plugin called ACES Transform inside the, how do you call it? Oh, effects panel. So if you select effects, under the Resolve effects color, you can transform your clips using two different plugins. The first one is ACES Transform, and the second one is Color Space Transform. So if you want to use like DaVinci Color Management, Resolve Color Management, you can use Color Space Transform. But if you want to work in ACES, I really recommend you to use the ACES Transform, right? Why? Because there's a slight difference in the result, and nothing is more correct than the other. It's just like slightly different result in the end. Okay, so what you can do is that you can apply. You can do this, like, hang on, let me show you. So you can use ACES Transform, and you can transform your clip from Loxi into Rec 709, just like that. Very easy, right? But now the thing is, we want to work in ACES. We want to work within this ACES. Now, if we're doing this, and if we are creating a node after this, everything that happens after this one is not in ACES, but it is in Rec 709. So we don't want that. What about if we are creating a node before that? So if you see this particular plugin, you see that the input transform is ReLoC. So the node that is happening before this transformations is in ReLoC. So we are still not working in the ACES space. So what you can do is that you need to split this into two different process. So the first one is like you use the ACES transform to transform from ReLoC into ACEScct. And in the second one, you can just like Alt and drag this one. And here you want to transform from ACEScct into Rec 709, right? And in the ACES versions, always use the newest one. And in the newest versions, you can do the gamut reference compressions. So by doing that, if we are doing anything in the middle node here, it means like we are working inside the color management framework. We are working inside ACES color management framework. So that's how we will do our color grading today within the color management framework. So what I want to do is that now that I have everything is grouped per scenes, per scenes, I want to apply this ACES transform, the first one, into in our group pre-clip. And then the transformation from ACES to Rec 709, I want to apply it right at the end in the timeline, right? So let's reset all of this. And we can do that in the group pre-clip. I have like exactly that. I have exactly the ACES transform that goes from ReLoC into ACEScct. And in the timeline, I have another ACES transform that go from ACEScct to Rec 709. Now, since I am doing that for all of this scene, all of this particular scenes here, you can really see that all of my clips are now displayed correctly or normalized, right? So if we are creating something in our clip level, that would be like within ACES color management framework, right? So now, before we move forward, what I want to introduce to you is that the concept of working with a specific set of node that you use to grade your footage. So the idea is that to save time, because whenever you are using exactly the same structure for every single clips, you can actually like work really fast and you can build your muscle memory because you know that exactly in which node you are doing what exactly, right? So what I want to do is that let's create a template, a node template to do our grade. So the first one, I think the very first one that I want to do is normally to do the noise reductions if I want to, right? And then after that, the second one, I can do my balancing. And after my balancing, I normally do my contrast. And after contrast, I'll do my exposure. And after my exposure, I'll do my saturations, right? And by the way, creating a node, you can, I was using shortcut that is Alt-S to create a serial node after the selected node. But you can also do a right click, add node, add corrector, right? Something like that. And then you can patch it. But, you know, if you want to, the shortcut is Alt-S to create a node after that, after the selected node, and then Shift-S to create a node before the selected node. So that is like the very basic node structure. And then after that here, probably we can create another one. Sorry. Can create another one, and I'll press Alt-P to create a parallel node. And in this parallel node, what I'm going to do is that I will use my power window. So if I want to do like a very targeted adjustment to change the amount of light in my clip, I can use this particular node. And perhaps the last one is a node to trim my adjustment, right? So now I have a structure to work with. So now if I want to do my exposure adjustment, I know that I will only doing it in this particular node. If I want to do my saturations adjustment, I know that I will do it exactly in this particular node, and so on and so forth. And by doing that, anytime you move to another clip, you know that, oh, okay, I did my balance, and then after that, I use my contrast, and then I use my exposure, and then finally, I go to saturations, and then it's split into three to do like the secondaries, like power windows, and then after that, I have a trim node at the end. So here is a tips that I normally use is that I normally use this saturation trick. So instead of using just the saturation slider over here, sometimes it can result in a very garish look. But that's just because the saturation slider is just boosting your signal up and down like uniformly, right? So if you have vector scope, if we just reduce our saturations, it's just like increasing or reducing our saturations like uniformly, unconditionally, right? So what I want to do is like, perhaps we can just change using a little bit, how do you call it, slightly advanced technique. By understanding a different color model, you can actually get a very nice saturations adjustment. So the way to do that is that if you go to the color space and you select HSV, stands for hue, saturations, and value. And then if you go to the channels and just activate channels number 2. So now if you see, now we have 3 different channels, right? And we have HSV as a color space. Now these 3 channels become channel 1 is H, channel 2 is S for saturations, and channel 3 is V for brightness or luminance. So now what we can do is that anytime we go to our primary control here, and if we are just using the gamma or gain control, it means that we are using the saturations in the saturations channel. So if you can see that, if I'm just boosting my gamma up and down, if you see the vector scope, it is not pumping up, boosting up our saturations uniformly. And also, you can also use the gain control to do that. But what actually you can do is that notice that the red and blue channels in this control actually doesn't do anything. Like if you do that, it's not doing anything because we are disabling the channel 1 and channel 2. So you can actually just use the green channel to do that, right? So it's now becoming your saturations control. It's not a hacky way. It's a really nice and sophisticated way to, increase your saturations. All right, so we have our node template, and what we can also do is that we can copy it to the other clips. So I can select the other clips, and by clicking the middle mouse button of your mouse, you can copy and paste all those, and selecting this, you can copy and paste everything. So now we want to use magic bullet looks, or we can combine magic bullet looks with just the available LUT that is available in DaVinci Resolve. So in this case, I want to do that. I want to use the LUT that is available in DaVinci Resolve, which is Kodak 2383. I can just use this, and I can just use magic bullet looks to add texture, right? So it's not necessarily that, okay, I use magic bullet looks and I just use everything in magic bullet looks. You can mix and match magic bullet looks with all other tools, and that's the beauty, right? So if you want to, though, you can also emulate 2383 within magic bullet looks. But what I want to show you here is that, that you can mix magic bullet looks with any other tools inside Resolve. So let's just drag and drop magic bullet looks into the equations here and press edit look. Now, if you see, before we have an ARRI Alexa source, right? But now we already transform our clip into ACES. It means that our input needs to be Magic Bullet Looks needs to accept ACEScct, and then it also needs to output ACEScct back out, right? We can do that very easy by going to the input, selecting ACEScct, and output, press same as input, right? And preview, we want to preview in Rec 709. Okay, like I told you before, the 2383 is already embedded here, the LUT. But what I want to show you, you can also do the 2383 within the film print tools. And you have all the other adjustment here. So it's like a little bit more flexible. You can change the temperature, you can change the tint, and so on. But now it looks like doubling the adjustment because we already applied the 2383 LUT before, right? So I don't want to do that. I just want to add texture to my clip. So first, I can use optical diffusions. So I want to use optical diffusion to soften a little bit of my image. And after that, because we are emulating the look of a film, probably it is nice to emulate the artifacts of a film as well. And one of the famous artifacts of a film is the halations, like this very bright reddish, how do you call it, glow in the high contrast area. And it's also come with a lot of presets. So for example, I just select this vintage 35 highlights, and you can see that's like a little bit more obvious than before. And I can just limit this only on the highlights. So perhaps just that. Okay. And now, depends on how you like it or not. You can also soften the black using the Telecine, like you can see before Telecine, and with the Telecine, how do you call it, tool, you can see like you get like a softer black. But you know, I don't want to emulate that effects, right? Instead, what I want to do is that to emulate the film grain that is normally visible in the when you're shooting with film, right? So in this case, you can tweak the grain to your liking, like we mentioned, like we learned last 2 weeks. You can do that in the red, green, and blue channel of your image, or you can just tweak it in the tonality based on the tonality of your image. If you want more grain in the highlight, less grain in midtone or shadow, you can do that. You can also just select any of this presets. So for example, let's just choose more than 35 and select confirm. And perhaps instead of like having our texture after 2383, maybe let's see if there any difference if we are putting it before. Well, apparently there's no difference. So that's fine. So now we can just move and grade our clip, right? So first, we see that the contrast is a little bit too high, and we can just tackle the contrast first. Perhaps something like this. And I can go to my exposure, and here I can select my HDR tool and select the color space. Okay, so this is like the concept of color space aware grading tools. And one of the color space grading tools, the color space aware grading tools in Resolve is this high dynamic range color wheels. So at the moment, if you go to the color space, it is referring to the timeline. So the color space is timeline and gamma is also timeline. But when we are opening our project settings, you can see that the timeline is Rec 709 and with gamma 2.4. And we don't want that, right? So what we want to do is that we want to set this high dynamic range color tools into ACES. What we can do is that we can select the color space into ACES AP1 and gamma into ACEScct. So now I can just like using like exactly the common knowledge of like a shooting, you can add like lights based on stops. So perhaps I can just add one stop of light, or maybe half of a stop, or maybe quarter of a stops, something like that. So that is the exposure adjustment. And then now what I can see is that it's still a little bit too dark, and I can just lift the gamma just slightly, something like this. and perhaps reduce the contrast to 0.7, something like that. And now I can play with my balance image, a balance node, and perhaps I can just use my offset tools to play around with my balance. So I want to add some red into my image and add yellow into my image. And how do I add yellow? Well, that's simple. You can just use the blue. And if you, how do you call it? Reducing the blue, it means like you are introducing the opposite color of blue, which is in this case, yellow. So just by doing that, before, after, very simple. And again, what I told you before, if you're doing this and if you're selecting another clip, and if you're using like a, how do you call it? Node structure, you can select color and ripple node changes to selected clips. Now, if you're going to this clip, your adjustment is already like applied to this clip. So that's actually a very nice way of working. So anytime you are like adjusting anything in this node, you can just like go to color and ripple it to the other clips, or you can ripple those adjustments to the clips that belongs in the same group, right? So, but in this case, let's just move on and let's just copy everything. And I'm working like very fast at the moment, guys. So excuse the how do you call it, the accuracy, because I see that we're already over our time limit. But what I want to point you out is that like this clip here. So let us create let us use this adjustment as our like a basic how do you call it, starting point, as a good starting point for this outdoor clip. And what we can see is that it feels like the saturations is lacking, but that's just because we haven't done any saturations. Let me just go into my saturations node and increase my gain and increase my gamma slightly. There you go. And now if I go to color, ripple node changes to the current group, everything has it, right? See, that is really fast. This one. Well, this one is not, because it is not in the same group. Okay. Instead of showing that one, let me show you this one as well. So this looks okay. Perhaps let us just add a little bit more saturations. And if we do before and after, it feels like the contrast level can go down slightly. So in this case, probably 0.65 or maybe 0.6, something like that. I like that. And now, because this particular group, particular clips is detached from the other clips, it is in its own group, I can create a look just for this group, right? Just for this clip, just for this group. So what I can do is that I can go to the group pre-clip and create another node here and apply magic bullet looks here, right? And now I can just create one look that only attack this particular clip. But if I have a different like clips in this group, it will be applied to any other clips in this group. In this case, I just want to add like a very nice glow, right? Something like this. At the moment, it looks very obnoxious. It's very strong. But, you know, with magic bullet looks, you can just change the strength. So maybe I just want to have it 15, something like that. So as you can see, we have a very hazy and glowy, how do you call it? Atmospheric type of looks. And when we're going inside, it looks like that. But to my liking, it feels like the contrast is a little bit too low because we're adding a lot of glow here. We can go back to our contrast adjustment and bring that up slightly. So there you go. Very quick overview of how you can use magic bullet looks in different type of workflows. So I hope you learned something today, and that should bring us to our end, to the end of our session today. And I hope you can learn something about magic bullet looks, how to use that in Premiere Pro and how to use that in DaVinci Resolve. I mean, if you're using Final Cut Pro or other host app, probably it's similar to Premiere Pro. So you can actually use all the tricks that we are learning today in Premiere Pro, and you can just try to apply that in Final Cut. And like usual, if you have any questions, about grading or Magic Bullet looks or anything about Maxon product, feel free to reach me at maxoncolor@maxon.net, right? And again, let me show you the page. Where is it? Right. This session is being recorded. So if you want to catch up with the recording, if you're joining us late and you want to catch up the recording, go to YouTube, type in Maxon Training Team, and you'll find the video there. Okay. And if you want to, you can get one of this t-shirt if you never got it before. So just use the link that Kyle has posted in the chat previously at the top. So if you scroll up to the top, you'll see that there's a link to the online shop, and you can get one of this t-shirt free of charge. And use the passcode Spooky Renders, all capitals. It is also in the chat, by the way. And if you're a student, by the way, if you're a student and you want to play around with Maxon One tools, you can get the Maxon One tools very cheap. And you can do that by going to maxon.net/en buy. And then after that, you can go into like this students. How do you call it? Where is it? If I'm going to buy, and you'll see that here, schools and university. Or you can also go to student and teachers. Yeah, student and teachers. So it is like very cheap. I think it's like if you drink coffee in the famous how do you call it, coffee chain, your monthly expenses probably higher than getting a Maxon One student license, right? So I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I hope you learned something. Thank you very much. And Haxer, thank you so much for creating this amazing burnout render, man. That's awesome. And I'm glad to meet you in the show. And yeah, hang on. Let me just unshare my screen. There you go. Yeah, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope to see you in 2 weeks' time. So if you have any questions, or if you have any topics that you want to learn in color grading or something and so on, please just reach out to me. I think you got the email already. It's maxoncolor@maxon.net. We'll be happy to get in touch with you and learn more from you. And you can also just tell me how you use Maxon tools in your grading, how do you call it, workflow. Well, this is Max, and it's been very nice to have you today, guys. And I hope to see you in the 2 weeks' time from now. Thank you very much, and have fun. Bye-bye.